I want to take you back to a dark bedroom in a farmhouse in Gordonville, Pennsylvania, on a winter night the year I was 23. A man with his back turned to me, and a silence I had just made with one small word and did not yet understand the price of. This is Hannah the Amish Girl, the channel where I say out loud the things that were only ever supposed to live in the kitchen behind the prayer cap. Before I tell you what happened the second time I said no to my husband, and how the whole house went cold before he ever opened his mouth, I need you to understand what the title cannot say. In my world, a wife's no was treated as a debt, and the whole house collected it from me, quietly, one warm thing at a time, until saying yes again was the only way to feel anything but cold. There is a doctrine under that. It is called headship. I left 2 children inside that house to be able to tell you this. I am going to take you to that second no. I promise you I will. But first you have to feel the warmth, so stay with me. Not for the numbers under this video. I mean stay. The way you sit with a woman at her table when she is finally telling the truth. If this is reaching you somewhere, tell me where you are watching from tonight, so the next girl, the one still inside a house like mine, knows she is not the only one who heard it. And let me ask you something gently first. Were you ever taught that saying no was a kind of pride? That a good woman did not have one? The afternoon before the first time I ever refused my husband, I canned 48 quarts of tomatoes. I want you to sit with that number, because the number is the whole story, and nobody who has not done it understands it. 48 quarts. That is a kitchen turned into a furnace in August. The wood cook stove going all day, the water bath boiling, the steam fogging the one window until you cannot see the yard. That is scalding the tomatoes and slipping the skins off with your thumbs until your thumbs are raw and pink, packing them into the jars, wiping the rims, the lids, the bands, the rack, lifting the rack, the whole afternoon bent over heat with 2 small children underfoot. Levi was 3 then, and Annie was a baby on my hip half the time. I had done the Monday wash that week through the wringer washer my father built, feeding the wet, heavy clothes through the rollers by hand. My body was a tool that the day used up and set down empty. And I want to be honest with you, because this channel is only worth anything if I am honest. I was proud of those 48 quarts. I lined them up on the cellar shelves still warm, hearing the lids tick down as they sealed, and I felt the one feeling a woman like me was allowed to feel about herself. Useful. I was a good wife. The Ordnung, the unwritten code that decides everything we may wear and own and do, never had to be written down to tell me that a good wife is a tired wife who does not complain. I knew it the way you know the cold is coming before the first frost. That is the world I want you to stand in for a minute. Not the world the tourists see. People drive through Lancaster County on a Saturday, and they smile at the buggies and the white farmhouses with no power lines, and they think they are looking at peace. I lived behind one of those plain white walls. What looks like peace from a passing car is very often just a woman who has learned not to make a sound. I was raised on this, born plain, in Gordonville, Pennsylvania Dutch before English, and English only learned at the one-room school they let us go to through the 8th grade. My mother smelled of wood smoke and the lye soap she boiled by hand, and from before I could read she taught me the 2 virtues that were really one: Gelassenheit, yieldedness, and Demut, humility. A good woman was low, quiet, unnoticed. She did not want things of her own. A want of your own could be named Hochmut, pride. And pride was the trapdoor under every woman's feet. A tear could be pride. A question could be pride. And a no was the loudest pride of all. I was baptized at 18, kneeling on a church Sunday, vowing total obedience to the Ordnung and to God, and not understanding, nobody told me, that the vow I was making was also the lock on the door. You cannot be shunned from a community you never joined. I joined. And then, at 19, on a Thursday in November, I married Jonas Lapp, a quiet second son from a dairy family 3 farms over, a man with serious hands and a mouth that almost never smiled, the kind of steady young man a father points to and says, "That one." He had spoken to my father about marrying me before he had ever really spoken to me. The only preparation I was given for being a wife, my mother gave me at the kitchen table the week before the wedding. She folded her hands and she said 7 words. A wife submits to her husband. That is what God asks. Then she stood up and went back to the dishes. That was the whole of it. So you can imagine, or maybe you cannot, and I hope you cannot, the kind of marriage 2 ignorant young people build when nobody has given either of them a single honest word. Let me tell you now what a no actually is in a house like that, because this is the part the road never shows you. It is not that you are not allowed to say it. You are, technically. No one stands over you. There is no shouting. The Amish do not shout. That is not our way, and I need you to hear that, because the absence of cruelty is exactly what makes it so hard to name. What there is instead is headship. A husband leads, a wife submits, the way the church submits to Christ. Bishop Christ King preached those very words over my wedding, soft-voiced and certain. A wife to her husband as the church to her Lord. And under that doctrine, a wife's no is not a closed door. It is a problem. It is a thing out of order. And a community whose whole genius is keeping things in order has one tool, and it is the most powerful tool there is. It is warmth. Think about how much of an Amish life runs on warmth that is given and can be taken away. You belong to a gmei, a church district, some 30 families, and that belonging is not a feeling, it is your whole life. It is who helps you at the barn raising and the butchering. It is who sits beside you on the backless bench through 3 hours of worship, the men on one side, the women on the other, the low bleed dragged out 1 slow syllable at a time. It is who brings food when there is a baby, who you are when you are nobody alone. And all of that, every warm thing, flows toward the woman who yields and slows, just a degree, around the woman who does not. They do not have to organize it. That is the thing I most want you to understand. No one calls a meeting to punish a wife. It happens the way frost happens. The husband's silence first, then the silence is noticed. A man's mood is the community's weather. His mother, 20 steps away in the Dotty house, grows a little cooler at the shared work. The sisters are a little briefer at the quilting. The other wives, who all know, because the women always know, hold themselves a half-inch further from you at the next frolic. Nobody says why. Nobody has to. You feel the temperature of your entire world drop, and you understand in your body that you did this with 1 word, and that there is exactly 1 way to make it warm again. You take the word back. There is a woman I have to tell you about, because she is the only reason I understood any of this while it was happening to me, instead of years later in a therapist's office. I will call her Lydia. She was old, older than my mother, and at a barn raising the year before my first no. They were raising a barn 3 districts over, and the women laid the noon meal on long tables. She set down a tray of fresh bread in front of me, and she spoke to me without ever once looking at my face. That is how our women say the things that cannot be said directly, eyes on the bread. She said, "Child, I am going to tell you what nobody told me, and I am only going to say it once." And then she told me how a wife is broken, not with a hand, never with a hand. One warm thing at a time, she said, until she cannot tell the difference anymore between yielding and wanting, between her husband's will and her own, because she has had her own taken away so gently she did not feel the knife. She picked up her empty tray. She said, "You keep yourself a little, somewhere they cannot reach." And she walked back to the food and was an ordinary old Amish woman again, and we never spoke of it. I did not understand her then. I understood her completely about a year later, in the dark. Now I am going to take you to the night I promised you, the second no, the night the whole house went cold before Jonas ever said a word. The first no had come months before, and I will be quick about it, because the second is the one that taught me. The first time I was simply too tired. It was the night after those 48 quarts of tomatoes, my hands still smelling of them, my back a single bar of pain, and in the dark, when he reached for me, I said no. Just that. No. Not angry, just empty. And Jonas did not say a word. He turned his back, and he breathed the way a man breathes when he is deciding something. And the next morning, the cold began. He spoke to me only what was necessary. And then my mother came to my kitchen with a basket of bread. She set it down, she watched me a moment, and she said one sentence, "A wife who lets the cold in cannot complain when the house freezes." Then she picked up her empty basket and walked out and did not look at me again. And I learned that the silence in my bedroom had a voice, and the voice was the whole community speaking through my mother's mouth. So by the second time, I knew. That is what makes the second one the one I carry. The first no I said in innocence. The second no I said knowing exactly what it would cost, and I said it anyway. And that is the closest thing to a free choice I had made in my entire married life. It was a winter night. The children were asleep. Levi was 5 then, no, almost 6, the winter before I started to come apart. The kerosene lamp was already out, and the wood stove was ticking as it settled, that small sound a farmhouse makes letting go of the day's heat. And he reached for me, and everything in me that Lydia had told me to keep, the small piece I had hidden somewhere they could not reach, that piece said no. Out loud. Into the dark. The second time. And I want you to understand what happened, because it is so quiet that if I do not name it carefully, you will miss the violence of it. Nothing happened. That is what happened. He did not argue. He did not touch me. He turned his back, the way he had the first time, and he breathed that deciding breath, and the cold came down into that room like the temperature really had dropped, like the wood stove had gone out. He did not speak to me that night. He did not speak to me the next morning. He did not speak to me the day after that. And then it left the bedroom and went out into the world, exactly the way it had the first time, only I could feel every degree of it now because I knew the machine. His mother in the dotty house, cooler. My own mother, when I saw her at worship, looking at me a beat too long and then away. The wives a half-inch further at the next quilting, the conversation closing over the place where I used to be, like water over a stone. No one said a single word to me about it. There was nothing to point to. There was only my whole world, very slightly, very faithfully, turning down its warmth, and the unbearable understanding that I could turn it all back on, all of it, the instant I stopped saying no. And here is the confession I owe you, because I will not pretend I was only ever the one this was done to. I want you to know what I became inside that cold, because I think some of you became it too. After enough days of the freeze, I stopped waiting for him to reach for me. I started offering the yes before he could ask, just to end it, just to feel the house get warm again. I taught myself to want the warmth back so badly that I would pay any price for it, and then I called my own surrender peace. I became my own enforcer. The community did not even have to keep the cold going. I would do anything to thaw it myself. That is what they had built me into, and I did it to myself in the dark where no one could see, and for years I called it being a good wife. There is a word for what that was. I did not have it then. I have it now, and an Englishwoman gave it to me, a counselor in the city, slowly, one word at a time, the way you feed broth to someone who has not eaten in a very long time. The first word she gave me was consent, and then she gave me a harder one. She said, "Sadie, what you are describing is coercive control. Consent that is not consent, because the cost of saying no had been made unbearable." I had to sit with that for a long time, because I had thought consent was the yes. She taught me that consent is only real when the no is also free. And my no was never free. My no had a price, and the price was the warmth of my entire world. And a price like that is not a price. It is a threat in a quiet coat. And I need to say the other thing. The thing this channel exists to say, even when it is hard. Jonas was not a monster. Jonas was not cruel, and he was not violent. And I will not let you turn him into the villain of my life, because it would be a lie, and lies do not set anybody free. Jonas was a man raised inside the very same silence I was raised inside. He was handed a script for being a husband. A husband leads, a wife submits. And he followed it the way he had been taught, because no one had ever shown him there was another way to hold a marriage. When I was tired, he answered me with silence, because silence was the only tool his world had ever put in his hand. He turned his back not because he hated me, but because that is what the cold does to the man it runs through too. He was a fellow captive. We were two people handed the same wordless machine and told it was love. The system is the thing, not the man. I live alone now in a small apartment in the city of Lancaster, 20 minutes from Gordonville and an entire universe away. When I left with one suitcase and the heaviest silence I have ever carried, and I left 2 small children inside that house. Levi is 6, Annie is 4. They are a few miles away, being raised by the whole community to understand that their mother is lost. I see them a handful of supervised, painful times, and I reach toward them through Jonas's sister on a thread so thin I am afraid to breathe on it. The ban came as I knew it would. My letters come back unopened in my own hand. My father looked through me in town as if I were made of glass. Some of what was taken cannot be returned, and I will not lie to you and say that it can. But I kept the 48 quarts of tomatoes. I do not mean the jars. The jars are years gone. I mean I kept the afternoon. I kept the woman who broke her own body in that furnace of a kitchen and then was punished, in the dark, for being too empty to give the one thing she had not already given. I keep her so I never forget what they meant when they said, good. They taught me that being good meant making myself smaller until there was nothing left of me to refuse with. And the no I finally said into that dark, the no that cost me the warmth of my whole world, that no was the first whole thing I had said in years. Your no is a whole sentence. It always was. Nobody ever told me, so I am telling you. If you ever lay in the dark and said yes because you were too tired to survive what no would cost you, I see you. If you grew up in a house where your body was the community's business and never your own, I see you. If somebody ever made the warmth of your whole world the price of your obedience and called it love and made you call it love too, I see you. If you became, for a while, your own enforcer and surrendered before anyone even asked, just to make the cold stop, I see you most of all, because I was you, and there was no shame in surviving the only way they left you. Choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.